Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm interviewing one of my amazing friends and past clients, Jana. So, a little intro about Jana is that she is a marketing expert, content strategist, and Pinterest educator for coaches, service providers, and other online experts. She is the creator of High Leverage Content, the system for turning your thought leadership ideas into evergreen marketing content that converts fast and often, and is easy to repurpose on repeat. Jana's current mission is to help her clients and students spend less time feeding the insatiable social media monster, so real, and lean into prioritizing evergreen content that can serve as a 24/7 salesperson for your business. Thanks for joining me, Jana.
Sure. How do you like my messaging?
I love
How did you
it.
like the bio? I just updated that bio and I can hear so much Samantha all over it.
That's so funny. I was reading it and I was like, boom, boom, bam. Like
Like,
it's
this is
hitting all of
good.
my, yeah, I
You're
love
like,
it.
this is good. This woman must have been my client at some point,
I
right?
must have drilled into this woman for 3 months
Right.
with love.
Yes.
So, why don't we roll everyone back a little bit? Because it was like, I think almost a year ago that we worked
Yeah.
that closely together. But tell me what was going on in your business that you wanted like extra dedicated copy and messaging support.
Yeah. So for 7 years, something like that, I was a Pinterest strategist primarily. I did Pinterest done for you setups. I did Pinterest intensives. I had a course that was all about how to set up Pinterest for coaches and service providers, and I still have that course. And it is still part of what I do. But I had decided at the point that you and I started working together that I was going to make a pretty big pivot. And pivots for me are like really a big deal because I'm a very like steadfast person. And one of the things that is like really great about me, but also can be a little bit like challenging when I'm managing myself, is that I don't like to change things about what I'm doing. And like I said, that has been like a really good superpower for me because I'm very consistent and people know me for the things that they know me for, and that all works out well. But it can be challenging sometimes too. So I was making this pivot into finally, after being asked by my clients and students for years to do it, teaching my content strategy. And I created High Leverage Content, which is a course with support and a system for what you talked about, creating content that converts essentially. And we focus on long form evergreen content in the program. And so it was a brand new offer for me. And even though I was an experienced person and I had done content strategy work for clients and through the lens of Pinterest as well for many years, it was brand new to me to be doing this particular offer in this way. So it really required me to dig in and figure out how to talk about that. And I know people who are listening who've made a pivot like that can probably relate to this idea that I used to be so good at talking about what I was doing because I had been doing it for so long. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was like starting over again. And when people asked me what my course was about, I was like, blah, blah, but I couldn't get it out. And I was like, who am I? What is going on? So I knew I needed to, like you said, get some one-to-one messaging support. And I knew that you were the right person for that. I wanted to clarify my message. I wanted it to roll off my tongue more easily. I wanted to be able to come up with all kinds of ways to talk about it in my sales content and just be really clear with people about what was in it for them to pay attention to what I was doing and consider the program and then get in the program. So yeah, so I was just like pivoting and didn't know how to do it or how to talk about the pivot, and I needed your help. So that's why we got together.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such a good time to reassess your messaging. And for everyone listening, your messaging is really just like giving your copy, your content, all your marketing, like a compass to follow, basically, of what am I going to talk about? What are the selling points that are worth highlighting? What do I want my offer to be known for? These are all basically decisions that you should make before you get into writing a sales page or starting a launch and things like that. So, a pivot, a new offer, even raising your prices. I have a lot of clients come to me and they are changing from one on one to a group program or a group program to a course. So, any kind of change like that, you're going to want to take a moment and think about your messaging. Janet, for you, with your brand new course, thinking about not just teaching, which you were already great at, but talking about the actual course itself. What was coming up for you about what might be hard to communicate that might not translate?
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the time I was worried that people wouldn't want long form content, that they wouldn't want to write a blog post. Instead, they'd want to be doing things like Instagram that feel sexier to them. Since then, some of that is because my messaging is now on point, and some of it is because things have shifted a lot. Everybody wants what I offer, which is great. But at that time, we were just beginning people were just beginning to start really talk in our space about the value of evergreen content. Again, the pendulum hadn't really started to swing back in that direction. So I was worried about that. I was also worried that people would think that the type of thing that I was teaching was going to take them a lot of time to see wins and successes with. And there is something about evergreen content and long form content and blogging that feels to some people like it might be too slow. And you and I talked about that a lot, addressed that a lot. And not only did you help me figure out how to explain why that's not necessarily true, and also why it's worth it to invest in something that's a little bit more of a long-term strategy, but also that's not enough. We can't just say that. You were like, no, we can't just say that. We need to actually figure out what it is about your offer that is going to give them the quick wins, that does give them the quick wins. And when we really focused on that, I realized, okay, yeah, that is actually happening, and I just need to get better at talking about it. So you really dug deep with me on that, and we really got into the heart of that, and that's been super transformational for my messaging for sure. So those were a few of the things that I was like, I guess, concerned about or felt like I didn't really know how to talk about yet. And then at the end of 3 months of working with you, I felt like that had completely changed. I knew exactly how to articulate the value of what I was doing. I knew what the quick wins were. I knew how to communicate those quick wins to people. And it's interesting because when you all of a sudden you know how to communicate those quick wins because they are happening, you just need to put words to them. The quick wins happen even more. So
Yeah.
it's like that those quick wins, talking about them breeds more of them. And that's been really amazing to see with my students. Like they actually, one thing that's interesting is like my students still get my sales emails. I'm that person who still sends the sales emails to my existing students. And I know some people are like, you do what? But I do, and I
I
do it for
support this.
very specific reasons. Yep. I do it for very specific reasons. And one of the reasons is that they keep my students engaged in the process. And so my current students are seeing those messages and they're like, oh yeah, I am getting those quick wins. And it's like it breeds more success essentially, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those are just a couple of things that you helped me with figuring out. Yeah.
I love that you said all of that because I feel like what you just said about your messaging can actually support your client results is so true. Your clients
That's what I was
don't
trying
know
to
to
say.
look for those wins. They don't know to look for those wins or celebrate those wins until we tell them to, right? And so making that part of your messaging, a quick win is such a great thing to build urgency as well because it shows people, oh, you're not going to get inside and wait 3 months or 6 months to see a difference. You are going to get more clarity or start taking action on XYZ like right away. And I think that kind of makes people feel like, oh, there's something waiting for me on the other side of buying versus, okay, I'm going to click buy and then just wait or take months to see a difference. So I love that you said
Yeah.
that.
I was just going to say one thing that we did is one of my key frameworks that I teach is called the 9 and 2 content pillars. And I actually started, I realized that I teach those 9 and 2 content pillars within the first like 30 minutes of the curriculum. And I think at one point I had said that to you and you were like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, I do. And you're like, okay, you got to talk about that. You've got to say like literally like in you enroll today, in 30 minutes after you get the email from me, which happens like right after you enroll, you'll know what the 9 content pillars are. And these are the things that you need to learn, your audience needs to learn and hear and understand more deeply to be ready to buy. And so you're going to know what those are. And does that mean you're going to have a client 30 minutes after you enroll in my program? No. But it's a big win. It's a big transformation. It's something that people can really look forward to and sink their teeth into and be like, oh my God, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want that. And then 30 minutes later, I'll know what those 9 things are that she's always talking about. Sign me up. So that's just an example. It just came to me. I remembered.
Yeah. You actually just reminded me that something that came up when we were working together too about having a course was how do I sell the
Mm,
course without giving too much away up front? A lot of
yeah,
people will say educational content, but if what you're selling is educational content, where's that line? So, how do you feel about how we were able to navigate that?
great. I feel really good about it. And it's so interesting because it's so fun when you are a marketing person and you're working with a marketing person to help you with your own marketing
Yeah.
because, and a lot of people think, oh, I'm a marketing person. Like I shouldn't need Samantha to help me with my marketing or whatever. And it's no, like it was so good to work with you on my marketing, even though I'm a marketing person. I actually teach that and I help my students with that. But I totally agree with you. It's different when you are a coach or a done for you service provider. There's a different dynamic with giving away a lot of your frameworks. versus being a course creator or even a program owner to some degree because group programs have a curriculum inside as well. So it is a different line. And I really appreciated that you appreciated that, first of all, because I think some marketing and messaging people will just say, oh, no, it's you can't overgive, like just give it all. And there's no such thing as being too generous. And
Yeah,
I don't believe that. And so I was so relieved to know that you understood that nuance. And I was like, no, I can't just
it is a
teach all the
nuance.
things that I teach in my course in my free content. Yeah, it's totally a nuance. Yeah, so I felt great about that. I loved that you understood that and that you were able to help me identify ways to talk about those frameworks in my content and my copy in a way that shows the value of them without actually having to literally go through them to spell them out and show people what they're getting. And that's hard. It was challenging, but we figured out how to do it. So,
Yeah. And for
yeah.
anyone listening who's, how do you do it? Really
Mm.
briefly, tell people why the framework matters versus how the framework works. So instead of, for example, with Jana and I, we weren't telling people what the 9 and 2 framework is, but we were like, but here's why you need it. Here's how it makes things easier. Here's how it makes it simpler. Here's how it takes away the guesswork. And like you sell people on the value of having that framework versus just saying, here's what it is, here's how it works. Oh, I already told it to you, still buy the course.
Yeah,
So,
I love
yeah,
that.
so that's the difference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that
Yeah,
we
so
were on the same page about that.
for sure. And so we worked together like on a lot of different things. I think we named your
Hmm.
newsletter, your email series, we launched your course, and I was overseeing and helping refine any emails you had going out. So what
Yep,
was
you
the
were going through
result?
my emails. Yep.
Yes, line by line. And
Hmm.
it was great. So what
Yep.
was the result of that first launch?
Yeah. So I think technically that was my second launch, if I'm remembering correctly. And my first launch was basically before I was working with you, it was all the warm people who had been on my list forever and who already wanted it and were going to buy it no matter what I said about it because I had created it and they knew me and they had taken other courses with me and stuff, right? So that was my first launch. And then the second launch that we worked on together, I was like, okay,
That's where it
Sam,
kicks in.
all the people who like already bought are the people who are like my tried and true, like what's that called? Like ride or dies, right?
Yep.
And now I need to learn how to communicate the value of this course to people who don't already know me and are coming in a little colder or a lot colder. And that second launch that we did, I think it was an $11,000 launch, which for me at the time, a five-figure launch was a really big deal and it was amazing results. I've since stacked those results and did even more to build on the work we did together. And my launches are way higher than that now, which is great. Thank you for your help with laying that foundation and that groundwork. But that launch was really good. And I did have people who were newer to my list who hadn't bought the first time who bought during that launch. And I think, again, a lot of that had to do with the fact that in launch number two, it was almost like it was launch number one because it was the first time where I was actually going out of my way with your help to explain why people should be in this course, right? So it was really great results, and you were with me the whole time, and it was just so good to have you in my back pocket. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I love that you said that about your second launch because that's so real. Is like the first one is like all
Hmm.
the easy yes, all the fire hot people in your audience. They're like, yeah, sign me up. I
Yep.
love you. And then it's like, okay,
Right.
now that those people have bought, who's left? And this is
Yep.
another good time to get some messaging support and copy support too, because it's like you know that there's demand for it. Your clients and your community have bought it. And now it's a matter of, okay, how do I make other people see it and love it and value it and want it as much as everyone else does? And that's where the like
Right.
refinement can really come in and make a big difference for your second, third, fourth launch and beyond.
And I think just to add to that, like the with the second launch, the people who bought during the second launch, it's like they were either new to me and they were cold, and my messaging that you helped me with sold them on that, or they were people who weren't new to me and they weren't that cold, but for some reason, the messaging that I had used or tried to use during the first launch didn't sell them,
Yeah,
right? They needed something more. And so we figured out what that something more was.
yeah,
So, yeah.
for sure. So then you said that your launches have continued to improve beyond then. And I
Yeah.
guess like how would you say that your revenue has changed or like how you're taking your messaging clarity into other areas of your business too?
Yeah. I think that in order to triple my launches, That's where I'm at these days, is I'm generally bringing in about triple that, which is exciting per launch. I think in order to do that, there were some other levers that I needed to pull, including like audience growth.
Yeah.
And so obviously the messaging that we create around the problems that I'm solving inside the course end up becoming the messaging or informing the messaging for things like social media content and more of that client attraction type of content. And even the blog posts that I write. And I teach people how to write high converting blog posts, but a lot of the messaging that we worked on together made my blogs better. So I think that there's that where it's, yes, Samantha, you taught me like how, like what to say in my sales content, but it also 100% spilled over into what I did then and what I still do now in terms of the audience growth content that I'm doing for visibility and just being interesting, fascinating, helpful in my free content as well. So that's been really good. Yeah, I think that would,
No,
I
but
would
I
say that
think,
would be the biggest place. Mhm.
yeah. And I think with your business model now of like high leverage content being a big like driver for you,
It is the
it kind
driver.
of,
Yep.
yeah, it goes to show like the value and like long-term value of investing in your messaging and not just
Right.
with me, but like even how you're paying attention to it and continuing to refine it over time.
And I will say, like, literally, some of the emails that I still use that are some of my more high converting emails, because these days when I run a launch, I make a decision. Am I going to use a lot of repurposed emails? Am I going to write a lot of new emails? And I mix it up. Like the next launch, I'm actually going to be writing a lot of new emails. But for this past launch, I'll tell you a little secret. I almost every email that I used for this past launch was repurposed. And I
Wow.
did that for a few strategic reasons, which we
Mhm.
could talk about. But when I look at those emails, a lot of those repurposed emails are ones that you and I wrote together, or that I wrote and you with what you taught me, or that I wrote and went through and said, maybe move this here and change this and say this differently and stuff, which was great. And then some of the emails are like almost exactly what we wrote together, and then others are iterated versions of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole like the work that you do, that messaging work, it reverberates through everything into the future, and you build on it. And just really literally I'm reusing some of it. So it's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. So for
Yeah,
someone
because
who, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say if you write an email once and it works, you should be using it again, right? So I just wanted to
Yes,
point that out. Yeah.
100%. I think this is so under underused, underrated when it comes to copy. And I think it's funny because we let our sales pages sit usually. It's not nothing's changing with
Mm.
the offer, so those don't get to change. But your emails are the same. Like you can actually reuse your emails. The same with like your welcome sequence. It gets to just sit there. And of course, you should go back and refine it once
Yeah.
in a while. But it's the same with your offer. If you notice that an email gets you a lot of clicks, or it gets you booked sales calls, or it gets you people in your DMs saying, hey, I loved your email. Can you tell me more about this? That is a sign to keep that email in your rotation because it's clearly
Yeah.
bringing the engagement and the interest that we want.
Yeah, and I think one thing people can take away from that is when you're creating that type of content, think of it as an asset. Like these are assets you're going to use on an ongoing basis. And if you're someone who does a lot of social media, it's easy for your brain to be telling you, oh, this is just, I'm just going to slap this up because it's going to be gone in 24 hours anyway. We accept that as the norm on social media. But when you're creating things like emails, especially sales emails, website copy, things like that, obviously we shift into thinking like this is an asset and it's worth investing in creating these assets.
Yeah, like our parents used to tell us growing up, the internet is forever. And that
Yes.
is true. It's
My
true.
parents didn't say that growing up, Samantha. You're like
They
half my
did.
age, but yeah, I'm
See?
sure that was good advice that your parents gave you.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But yeah, exactly what you said. The social media makes it feel like things are fleeting, that things can't be reused. We have to be new. And maybe that's true for the influencers who rely on being novel and interesting every day. But when you're a business and you have the same services or the same courses available, then that means you can use the same assets to promote them. And of course, keep it fresh, repurpose, refine it, but definitely treat it like an asset that you can tap into when you need to build that desire and interest in your offers.
100%.
Yeah. So to close out, if there's someone considering working with me on their messaging or their copy, what would you close out with them and tell them?
Yeah. Yeah, don't hesitate, I would say. Definitely. Literally, if someone reached out to me, and they have actually, and said, you worked with Samantha, what do you think? Like 100%. It was such a great experience working with you. And I know for sure that I got like my ROI, if you will, return on both what I spent literally to have you in my back pocket for that period of time. And then also like the time and energy that I put into it because like it was about getting your expertise and your guidance, and it was also about just the space that you were holding for me to think of these things as assets and to create them so that I could use them so for months and years. So
Yeah.
do it, hit her up.
Thanks, Jana. Yeah, and thanks everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions at all about messaging, copy, stick around, watch more of the videos that are going to get into all of that. And Jana, thank you again so much for joining me.
Thank you for everything.